Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Yak Gadget, for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com. Eastport Marina, on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake. For all your lodging, kayaking, and fishing needs. Go to eastport.info. Now let's get this show started.
Welcome back, everyone. Brad Hurlebaus here. Another episode of Feather and Fur. And we're going to get this out of the way real quick for the super observant people out there. Yes, the backdrop is slightly different, but the same. I did kind of move my office area in the basement, so a little more concrete. You can definitely tell I'm in the basement now, but hey, it's much more comfortable in the corner. And it's a little quieter, so hopefully that's a little bit better for everyone. Tonight, we have special guest Steve Christensen, and we are going to talk gun dog training. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this one. I'm a huge fan of dog training. I know some people don't like it. I thoroughly do enjoy it. I've started enjoying it more as I've matured more because I have more patience, and you need patience when training dogs. That is a mistake I made when I was younger. But I'm really excited to talk an overview of puppy to kind of finish dog, touch base on key points, keep it a little bit general also, and just a really good overview for those people that are just looking to get into training or thinking about getting another dog, or maybe they made some mistakes and want to take a look at the entire process again.
Absolutely. That sounds good to me.
So I like to start my show the same way every time and ask how you got into hunting. Was it a family tradition? Were you late onset, jumped in the game yourself?
It started really young. My father was a hunter. He was actually born and raised in Utah.
Okay.
And at that time, for him, hunting so much wasn't a sport. It was a way of life.
Sure.
They depended on that. So I, at a young age, I got to hear Dad's hunting stories, and it was primarily deer hunting. He'd rabbit hunt, pheasant hunt when they had them. So listening to his stories really got me excited. And I think I started shooting when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
I started deer hunting actually in Wisconsin when I was 12.
All right.
And then the snowball just rolled.
Sure.
But with my father, believe it or not, the only thing I ever hunted with my father was deer.
Okay.
I never did any other type of hunting with him. And, he used to tell me stories of the retrievers that he had. And then I come along and there's no retrievers.
So you didn't grow up with dogs then?
I did. I grew up with dogs, but not retrievers.
Okay.
The first dog that we had would have been a Springer Spaniel.
All right.
And we had him. The tough part was I was still pretty young.
Sure.
And Dad got really busy with a large family and work. And the dog actually did not get the time that he deserved. So we did the right thing. We had very close friends that loved the dog, and they took him.
Okay.
And the nice thing about that is he knew that I was really attached. So we're looking at that 12, 13-year-old age.
Sure.
And so he would actually invite me to come out, and he had a black lab and Springer. So I still got to hunt over the dog.
Oh, nice.
It was nice to be able to watch that dog develop and flourish.
Right.
So, but for the dogs, that came for me a little bit later. I've been doing it now for about 20 years.
Wow. That's a lot of experience right there.
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of hard work and knowledge. And mistakes, as a trainer, you make your mistakes, that you learn, and you try to wake up every day and be a better dog trainer.
Right.
If you have that passion and you do it the way, in my opinion, the way you should do it. For me, the dog started a little bit later. But that was it was in me that I really, really wanted. I love dogs, but I was infatuated with the Labrador Retriever.
Okay.
And I think that at that time frame, I mean, they were still a really popular dog.
Sure.
But I just loved watching, TV and seeing retrievers work. And then the Great Outdoor Games came along, and I watched, the first Great Outdoor Games, and I thought, man, that is amazing. And that really kind of got its hooks into me, the whole competition aspect. But
Okay.
I just thought, boy, that's just amazing. You can get a dog to do that
Right.
and be able to have that relationship with that dog. And one minute it's curled up next to you on the couch, because I spoil my dogs. And then the next minute you're out there and the dog's working and doing what it loves to do, and you're enjoying the ride, if you will.
I mean, that's a great thing about a lab. I loved my lab. I loved him to death. They've got a really good off switch. They really do. I mean, they have such a high drive in the field, and like every dog, they need exercise. I'm not saying you can't exercise your dog, but they have a really good off switch where they can turn it off in the house.
Yes. Now, I agree with you on that, but I also agree that when you're looking at genetics, that can play a role in it too.
Sure.
But I don't.
Yeah, that's a generalization. They're like,
yeah, but I don't want to be when I say that, because I've had super high powered field trial dogs field trial champions, and
sure.
I actually had a male out of one of the best reproducing black males in history, and he was a great dog. Like you said, he had the off switch. He was just a big baby. But you can find some of those dogs that are a little bit more higher strung, and that with the pointers and some of those other breeds, but that's what they're bred to do. They're bred to run big and large, and you need to know that. So I would say when it comes to the genetics, for the most part, just do your research. First and foremost, in my opinion.
What a segue to just starting about picking out a puppy, hey? We just rolled right into that.
That sounds good. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I won't go too deep into it, but because we could have, you could have a whole topic on just that. But the first thing that I will say is health. Okay. So when you're going to look at a puppy, whatever kennel or breeder you want to look at, educate yourself first on the breed, no matter what retriever breed it is, any dog for that matter. Educate yourself, know what their health issues or their possibilities are. For years, the Labrador Retriever, the other breeds, was just hips and elbows.
Right.
Well, we've evolved so much farther in science and medicine to figure out other issues. So I would say look at the health. So there's so many things that have come up, and it's difficult to try and test for all of them, but we try to do the best we can to test for as much as we can. So make sure that the sire and the dam have their health clearances, because there's things out there. There's a ton of people that have them that, good example, I mentioned exercise induced collapse, or central nuclear myopathy. They have no idea what those are. And so first and foremost, try to get good health clearances on sire and dam. And if you got questions, there's plenty of people out there that have knowledge on that, but do your research. For gun dog aspect, in my opinion, you want to put the odds in your favor. Okay. So what I mean by that is looking at a pedigree and understanding what that pedigree means. Okay. Now, can you get a dog with no pedigree to hunt and hunt very well? Absolutely. I've seen those dogs. I've had some of those dogs. Brad, I've taken mixed breed dogs and made them hunting dogs. So it's not impossible, but in my opinion, when you're looking at the pedigree, that should tell you a story, of what that lineage has done. Okay. Now, the other thing is, I do know So if you're looking at the pedigree and you see titles in there, senior hunter, master hunter, field champion, amateur field champion, or if you jump in on the HRC side, you got your hunting retriever champion. So that will help you. Those genetics are there. So you're upping your odds for success.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, that being said, I also know dogs that are field trial champions that have never hunted a day in their life.
Right.
And vice versa. So do your research on that as well. When you call the breeder, ask, does the siren dam hunt if you're looking for a gun dog? So put the odds in your favor from that aspect. The other part is, so when we go into, let's say we're going in to pick our puppy. So a lot of people, they get excited. They get all worked up. Oh my gosh, it's time to get the puppy, and they get so excited / nervous. I want to make sure I pick the right puppy. I want to have the greatest dog. And first and foremost, pick the litter. First of all, pick the litter, because just like I said earlier, you're going to build your success if you go with a good litter. Then the next thing that I say, and some people, will disagree, but I like letting the puppy pick you.
All right.
Now, that being said, if you're more advanced and you have characteristics that you like to see and you've been through the process a lot, then yes, there might be one there that you like a little bit more, which is perfectly fine. But I'll be honest with you, Brad, some of the best dogs that I've ever had, I just sat back and I let the dog come to me. Sure. And warm up to me, and they've been some of the best ones. So it's always there's nothing guaranteed, but I like sitting back, watching that puppy and seeing how they interact. But I also like to see how they react to me.
Sure. And that's great advice, especially for someone that hasn't been through this before. Or so how many, unless you're a kennel operator or something like that, or you like a lot of dog power in your stable for hunting, a lot of people only do this maybe 4 or 5 times throughout their lifetime.
Right.
Like this for the average weekend hunter, picking out a puppy is not an every year thing. It's an every 10-year thing, maybe.
Right.
Right. So, if that's not a process you're super comfortable with, you're like just letting the dog pick you, like you just said. That takes a lot of pressure off of you right away.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that a good breeder will do is, you interview the people that are buying your puppies. If you do a good job, you interview them, what they're planning on doing. Is this person going to hunt 5 times a year? Or is this person going to use this dog as a hunting operation dog?
Right.
And, so I think some of those, so you can, as a breeder, you watch those puppies develop and you can see characteristics and behaviors. And that can help the process as well. But by all means, I guess the best advice I could do is don't stress out about it. Enjoy it, because, it's like they age and they're gone before you know it. You know what I mean? Enjoy that process, because it's really special. It really is. You're adding a valuable member to your family and to your life that you're going to have a wonderful journey with.
Right.
So by all means, don't stress about it. Everything will work out.
I agree. That's great advice. It really is. I haven't picked out a puppy in years. My last 2 dogs have been rescues. So I'm excited. My next dog I will be getting a puppy. I am going to go through the whole puppy thing again. I love getting rescue dogs. Don't get me wrong. I love being able to work with them, but they're always in the back of my mind. I'm like, man, if I would have got you as a puppy, I just can't, I can't fathom where you would actually be. Cause I see where we are today. And I'll admit, I still kind of get frustrated with Pippa, because she'll blow a point, or she'll just be being a bonehead out in the field. Sometimes I'm like, well, I've only had 4 years to work at you. You had 6 years of bad habits. And from where I got you to where you are now, like, I just have to accept that I haven't had that much time with you to break all these habits. And
Right.
so yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get back into the puppy stage. I am.
Well, and from, you know, an outside perspective, of course, I haven't seen you work with your dog, but I would say you've done a great job. It sounds like you've done an amazing job with that dog. And like you said, to go from 6 years of habits that have been developed, and you've been able to work through that, and like you said, thank goodness you're more patient, and you know,
Right.
you see that. But I think one of the other biggest things is knowing what the expectation should be. And I think that's very difficult for a lot of people. You know, they get a dog and, you know, I want the best dog in the woods, right?
Right.
But it shouldn't be that way. You know, it's not a competition. You know, you're out there to enjoy it. So you realize that, you know, when you got that dog, that there were going to be some challenges, and that you were going to have to
Oh,
work
yeah.
really, really hard. But the beautiful thing about that is the work that you've put in. You know, you can sit back now, even though she's maybe not as polished, or, you know, some of those bad habits kind of rear their head. You know, deep in your heart that you've bonded with that dog, and you've taken her to another level.
Exactly.
And that's a beautiful thing.
And I mean, yeah, she was a lot of work. We worked through a lot of different issues, not like hunting and training helped work through other issues, right? Because it increases that bond. Just daily obedience training just builds that bond. Everything else, I mean, do we still have some issues? Absolutely. Compared to where we got her, though, it's amazing. So yeah.
So that's, you know, that's from that point. So you're gonna, you know, you get that puppy,
right?
And so we'll roll into, you know, what do I do, you know, from here forward. And this is for, you know, I want this to be for the guys that haven't trained many dogs, or just are looking into getting into it. So there's many ways to do it, but I'll kind of run through, you know, my opinions and how I've done things for years. But you get the puppy home, let the puppy be a puppy, you know.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is people are so that, okay, I gotta, you know, yes, training starts right away, but I think, in my opinion, the more important training is, you know, of course, potty training,
right?
You know, and then you can start developing behaviors that you wanna develop. Okay, the retrieving should be fun. Okay, and what I do, or what I like to do with the retrieving, is I like to find a hallway in the house, and I will get, of course, like an item, maybe a small paint roller or something that the dog can handle for their size. And I get a hallway, and I will get down on the floor, and I will hold that puppy up, and I will play, and then I'll toss the item. Of course, we're trying to develop the retrieve. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make is that when that puppy returns with that item, is they want to take that item from that puppy right away.
Sure.
Okay. Which, in my opinion, you shouldn't do. You let that puppy have that item, praise them, give them love, tell them great job, then eventually take it from them. What you'll do is, of course, the hallway is closed, and the dog has one way. It has to come back to you. Okay. But a lot of times it'll try and slip around you. If you start taking that item from that puppy too quickly, you will develop, in their mind, it's keep away.
Sure.
That dog, next thing, well, they're so smart at that age, they already know that as soon as I get back to that person, he's taking my fun item away. Make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
So that's how I start developing the retrieve and developing that bond with that puppy. Okay. And
I mean, it's like with all, like, let them have that reward for a little bit.
That's right. That's right. And don't just do it a little bit. The other thing that I like to, there's some sayings that I have, and you've probably heard them, or most people, is, you know, keep it like candy. Okay. If you give a young kid all the candy they want in one sitting, they're probably going to get sick, and they won't like candy. you know,
right.
keep it a little bit at a time. Kids love candy. Same way with a puppy, a little bit at a time. Don't overwhelm them with it. Keep it like candy, pull it away from them so they're wanting more.
Sure.
Okay. And I think that's a very important philosophy when it comes through all stages of retriever training. Know when to call it quits and don't overdo it. You know, don't take that fun out of it. Don't take that drive out of it. Build it, you know.
Sure.
So you go in and we're building a foundation. It's just like you're building a house. You know, you have to have a great solid foundation. And I think people skip past that foundation a little too quickly, and then all the bad habits develop. And now we've got to go back and try and fix those habits. But if we really take our time and do things right, you'll have a great dog in the end. But then once the puppy starts getting a little bit older, then we can start moving outside, depending on the weather. Of course, we're up north where it can be a little bit harder, but
still snowing in April.
Yes. Oh, goodness. Terrible. So, but keep the retrieves. I usually like to start with hand retrieves, going out in the yard one at a time. Don't be too complex. Don't try and throw multiples. But I apologize, but I want to back up a little bit because I think the puppy stage is very important where you can create some very bad behaviors. So don't assume anything when you get a retriever. What I mean by that is don't assume that dog is going to automatically want to retrieve. Don't assume that dog is not going to be gun shy when it gets older.
Right.
Okay. So we start developing things to work with that dog. So a good example for the gun shyness at puppy. So I'll let him get home in the house for a couple of weeks, let him settle in nice and start getting that good bond. But when I start feeding that puppy, I will stand back at 10, 15 feet from that puppy and I'll start clapping my hands gently, little bit. Then as time goes on, I'll get a little bit louder. And you watch your dog. You see how your dog reacts to it. Now, if the dog is getting frightened by it or worried, then back off a little bit. Either make that distance greater or make the sound, not as loud. But eventually I will continue working with that dog until I'm standing over the top of it, clapping my hands. And that's starting to develop getting used to those noises.
Right. And another person, like I had one other guest on and we talked, like we had a very puppy focused episode and he kept going back to shaping behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a great term. And really, I mean, you're using food to help shape that behavior. And it's no different as we get into like actually training to break a dog to a gun. And like with I don't want to skip too far ahead, but you're using the retrieve then at that point as a reward and the focus to bring that gun in closer. At least that's how I've always done it. Like I'm not a fan of just tying a dog to a leash and shooting a gun over it. I think that's probably the worst. That's absolutely a no. So, but like you're using the same philosophy, but you're doing it when they're a puppy. I mean, and the food right now is their motivator, their drive, their focus point, and you're bringing that loud noise in, shaping that behavior for the future.
Exactly. And also, like you said, and I know before, I think I listened to that episode where they were talking about behavior and I'm sitting in the truck, it's window time. And I'm like, man, he's got it. He knows it. And you're developing that behavior. And food is, like you said, a huge motivator. So we typically use food in multiple ways during our training process. Obedience, once they've established some of the obedience, we'll put the obedience with the food, and, like my dogs, personally, and some people think I'm a jerk by doing it, but you're going to sit, you're going to stay, and I'm going to place the food down, and then I'm going to release you to your food. That is for multiple reasons. One, that's developing the behavior that you want. And it's also to have that relationship with that dog. I also believe in establishing the alpha, if you will, and let the dog know that, they're a pack animal. Okay. and there's one alpha, and I want that to be me, if you will. So there's times where I'll actually get down on the floor with the puppy, and when the puppy wants to come and get food, I'm acting like I'm eating it, and I'll push that puppy away until that puppy submits. Now I allow that puppy to come and eat, because the alpha eats first. People think that's crazy, but that's developing behaviors.
Right.
So, like I said, we could sit here for hours, but I don't want to dwell on that too far. So
nope. I get it. And releasing the dog, even as they get older, a thing that I was taught a long time ago, which I've always carried through, is basic obedience never ends.
You betcha. That was the next thing that I was going to roll into.
There you go. There we go.
Very good. Very good. So I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. Obedience. Okay. And, I've had times where I've talked with people and they sit back and they say, well, because I run hunt tests with my dogs, AKC hunt tests. That's just the venue that I got into that I enjoy. I've taken a hiatus from it just because life has been so busy, but and that's fine. But people are like, well, you don't have to do that. You do that because you're competing your dogs in a hunt. And I said, no. If I had a regular house dog, it would have this much obedience.
Right.
And it would have the exact same obedience. So I think obedience is king. Okay. That's part of your foundation. And you're going to rely on that obedience the whole life of that dog. And it never stops. It never will stop. The beautiful thing about it is when you do it properly, the dog is polished, and it's that dog is you and that dog are on the same page all the time, and it's just a healthy relationship between you and your dog. And what I mean by healthy is you don't do the obedience, so you're not yelling at the dog, you're not chasing the dog, which when you get a little older like me could cause me to have a coronary, but in all honesty, obedience is huge. Okay, so everybody has a little bit different way to do it, but my first stage of obedience is reward based and praise based. So we're going to start with the sit command. We're going to evolve to the stay command, the here command. Everybody does it in a little bit different order. I don't want to sit here and tell you what order you have to do that in, but I would like to say here is very important. So I would put that high on the list.
Right.
And I would also put, the sit command high on the list. But with retrievers, we're going to teach them multiple things: sit, stay, down, heel, here,
right,
of course. And here is the come command if, that's what we use. But
there's a mistake I made that I was taught quickly. Pick one. Here
absolutely.
Or come. I think people, that's one thing I've told new trainers numerous times, and they kind of look at me with this little face like, I've never thought of that before. So I want to spit, because that was a mistake I made. Pick one. It's here or it's come. It's one or the other, not both.
Correct. And when you're using your obedience commands, one word, one word. And what I like to do, of course, when they're young and I'm teaching them, I'll say their name first, then the command. Okay. But then as time goes on, I evolve out of that, and the name is not said. Right. I just say the command. Okay. And I want that dog to finish that command. And then we can evolve into, other commands like place. Okay. And teach that dog place. To me, that's obedience. I want you to go to a specific spot, and when I say the word place, that's where you need to go. The place command is a beautiful thing, because in hunting, we want that dog to bring the bird back to us, deliver that bird, and then say place and go back to your hide or wherever, wherever that is. In the house, that's a beautiful command, because if you have company over and the dog may be a little overwhelming, place, I've got a Momarsh home cot, and that's, I say place, that's where they go and they lay down. They know that's where they need to be. So that's another great command to work with as well. So, so how I work.
Do you
Go
teach the
ahead.
Kennel command?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. I
Yep.
forgot that one as well.
Nope,
So
that's okay. I wasn't sure if you use place also for Kennel or if you keep them. I keep them separate.
I do
use
as well.
mat. I use mat like mat. That's what I was taught. Place mat, same thing. But I also have Kennel as well as a separate command. So
Absolutely. And so we use that, for, dogs that are crate trained. That's what I do is Kennel. And then if, we're out and about and the dog's in the kennel, I say, Kennel, I want you to go to the kennel. And then also like the dog trailer, when we're out training or we're out hunting, kennel, and that means I got to get up in there and we're done, the time's done. But the other thing that I will say about the obedience and that I think is important is, first of all, when we're teaching obedience, especially with young dogs, it's not a long drawn out affair. Okay.
Right.
What I mean by that is during your session, a daily session, make it 5 minutes, make it 10 minutes max, keep it short, keep it sweet. Every dog is a little different. So I'm generalizing this, but every dog's a little different. A lot of retrievers take obedience for the most part pretty well. You will have some that, how do I say that, you'll go through and you'll teach them, but their attention span quite isn't there. So you'll do it, you'll get it pretty good, but you won't get it where you really want it, because that dog might not be able to keep that or retain that attention for you to continue to teach him work. Does that make sense?
Nope,
so
that makes sense.
We'll go on to another command and then we'll kind of come back around. And a lot of times I don't want to get into like collar conditioning right now, but that's where you can kind of firm some of that stuff up too.
Sure.
So, but obedience is something that I take to the highest level, if you will, or I spend the most time on, because it's that important to me. And, really it's not all about you. It's the safety of the dog.
Right.
You're out in the field and you're working now, good example. I used to pheasant hunt a lot of places along roadways.
Sure.
And I want to keep that dog safe, so I want good obedience on that dog. And not have to use the e-collar so much maybe to stop the dog. The e-collar is there just in case I have to get to that point. But if you do your obedience thoroughly and well enough, a good trained dog should know, I can't go there,
Right.
So not only that, but if, as much hunting as you've probably done and I've done through the years, there's been some of those moments where it gets a little bit, the dog's in that position where it's like, oh boy, this could go the wrong way.
Oh,
it
yeah,
could go the wrong way. Yep. So that's where the obedience really comes into play.
And I mean, you have to,
important.
Like when people are like, my obedience is good enough. I always looked at it this way, and this is what I strived for with my first lab, like specifically for the here command. You need to be able to call your dog off chasing a bird.
Yes.
Like you have to be, and we train our dogs to have super high bird drive, right? We want high bird drive, high retrieve drive. A high retrieving dog is easier to train because that's the reward. So we like you said, you're shaping behavior in the beginning with retrieve and a paint roller or like a small toy or something, right? We're training that into them. But I had a situation, I was hunting a flowage from shore and we had a diver and it was just getting way too far out. And I needed to be able to call that dog off. Did I want to lose that bird? No. But I was worried by the time it was cold out, it was snowing. By the time my dog would have got to that bird, I'm not sure he would have had the stamina to swim all the way back to shore. Yeah. I have no means. I didn't have a boat. I didn't have a skiff to get him out of that situation. I had to call him off that retrieve. If you don't have that level of obedience, that's too high. That's a really high risk. I'm not personally willing to take with my dog because my dog isn't a tool.
Absolutely. And that's the hard part, that if you've done it long enough and you've been around enough people that have done it, that's the hardest part. When you're sitting with like-minded people that have the same passion as you, but you hear the horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the worst. You know, you hate to sit there. It gives me goosebumps because, you know, I've heard those horror stories, and to have that love for that animal, and then those things happen, and then they could have been prevented.
Right.
It's hard, but it's you know, the silver lining is it's educational,
True.
you know, and people share those with you, and you know, it opens your eyes and it makes you realize, you know, where you could be a better trainer or possibly not make that mistake. And you know, accidents do happen. That's just the way life works, but we try to prevent it as much as we can. And
Absolutely.
the obedience is crucial. Um, you know, and the other part of that equation is you want to go out for a hunt with a buddy or somebody, and you want to enjoy that hunt. You know, you don't want
Right.
to be that guy out in the blind that's yelling at the dog all the time, and the dog's
Right.
not doing what it's supposed to be doing, so on and so forth. So think about that. And that's the thing that a lot of people, you know, they get to doing this or they want to train their dog, but they just don't have the knowledge. And that's where hopefully we can, you know, we can help with that. The other thing is, you know, as you're developing that dog, um, you know, look for help, reach out to people. If you got a retriever training group in your area, you know, go talk with them. You know, guys like me, I guess I like giving advice. I like helping. And, you
Sure.
know, I can give you advice and you can say, well, I don't want to listen to that, move on. And that's perfectly fine. Because I'm not perfect at what I do, but I want to help
Right.
because I want to see success with you and your dog, because the memories that you're going to gain are huge,
Right.
and it's a
Absolutely.
wonderful thing. So I know I'm getting off topic here,
Nope, we're good. We're good.
So we're going to develop those behaviors at a young age. We're going to start building the retrieving. We're working on obedience. We're going to work on a command and obedience, right? And what I like to do is I like to work on that command, but I don't push too fast and start doing multiple sessions where I'm trying to teach two commands, if you will.
Sure.
Okay. We break it down. We build on one command. We get that command really, really, really good. And then we'll move on to another command. We don't want to create a gray area during our training process for the dog. We want it black and white. Okay. And guys, it's very easy to make gray areas. Okay. Because they don't understand dog psychology, if you will. And I think that's really important to know that psychology, to be able to think like that dog or know
Sure.
what that dog is thinking. And so they'll create gray areas and the dog gets confused. Okay. So we want to keep it black and white. We want to keep it simple, work on one command, get it good, move on to the next command, and just continue to build with those commands. Okay. I like, when it comes to obedience, I like using just teaching with hands. I like ropes, leads, and those are the tools that I use to start working with obedience. And then as we go on and we start developing more of the retrieve, then, you know, by all means, continue to work that retrieving with your obedience, if you will, but keep your expectations real. But also don't develop bad habits like breaking and so on
Sure.
and so forth. It's okay when they're young to let them take off right away, but we have to eventually, that needs to, you know, slow down, and we need to start steadying our dog.
Right.
So the time frame in that as well. But develop the retrieving. You have to remember too, as we're working on them seeing items go or fall, if you will, mark a fall. It's all visual, and they're going by their eyesight. So when they run out there, they're running out to where they believe that item fell. Well, eventually those retrieves might get a little tougher, so we need to develop their nose. So as a puppy and younger through that, you can start developing their nose at a younger age. Not off the retrieve so much, just start getting a bird wing or whatever, dragging it through the yard and hiding it. And let them get out there, catch that scent trail and work that scent trail, and boom, they got their reward. A ton of praise. Sure. Great job. So those are little extra things you can do along the way too. I had a chocolate male, which a lot of guys don't like the chocolates as much, but
I'm a big chocolate fan.
I'm soft on the chocolates. The deal with the chocolates is they just haven't proven themselves as well as the blacks and yellows. But anyways, that has to do with a lot of breeding in the wrong direction, in my opinion. I've had some great chocolate dogs, but I had a chocolate male that he was one heck of a gun dog. Great gun dog. And I started him young, and I could remember it didn't matter where because I started him, I think, with a pheasant wing. And no matter where I drug that thing, at 12 weeks, 14 weeks old, he'd nail it every time. I would bury that thing under a mountain of leaves, or I'd have it in the house if the weather was bad. My wife hated it, but I'd drag a bird wing through the house and plant it under dirty clothes or whatever. But those are little things that those are behaviors you can develop. But also remember that retrievers are a visual dog. They do like to use their nose, but we want to develop that nose.
Sure.
We want to be able to get them to understand that, in situations where a bird goes down, it might drift, or it might sail farther, or there's chaos going on and multiple birds are coming down if you're waterfowl hunting, and getting them to understand to use that nose. And that comes in time as they mature as well. But we can do little things to help develop it in a quicker fashion.
Sure.
So we're going to go out and we're going to start throwing retrieves for this dog in the yard. And if we've done a good job, we haven't promoted the keep away game, but always assume that might rear its head. So long lines are good for somebody that doesn't know. I mean, a long line, put a long line on. It's as long as you want it to be. But usually at a younger age, we're going to keep it about 50 feet, 60
Sure.
feet. And that way you've got it just in case he wants to play keep away. You can reel him back in, and we're developing that. Because you also have to remember that what we do in the house doesn't automatically transition to the yard, because we're going to do yard work, and then we're going to evolve into full field work.
Sure.
Okay. And don't assume that as well as you're training the dog. A lot of people make that mistake. Well, he did it here. Why won't he do it here? Okay.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was going to say that wasn't a mistake I made, but that's a step I skipped. So to take that one step farther, you go from the house to the yard to the field to hunting.
Yep.
And the mistake I made was I thought I was simulating hunting situations well enough, and you just don't. I couldn't. I mean, you can't get that excitement when birds are working, and that so translates to a dog. I mean, I wouldn't say I made the mistake, but my dog wasn't ready yet.
Right.
Like, so I needed to step back and realize these first few hunts aren't for me. Like, I need to bring some people let them hunt with me. And I need to focus on getting my dog trained. Perfect.
I'm glad you realized that, because that's the biggest thing. In most of the time, if I have, a client dog in, that's the biggest thing is, I've worked with that dog. I've trained that dog. Now I spend time with the owner, and I work with him and the dog, him or her with the dog,
Sure.
and to let them know what they're doing wrong or what they need to do. But that's the next thing that I tell them, okay, is continue to train. Okay. Right. When you go hunting, if you can, go out there, set your gun down, and let your other guys do the shooting while you're controlling your dog. And that's huge. And then he said, well, I like shooting birds. I said, well, it's important that you follow up with all the obedience and the commands, because we want to keep the dog safe. Right.
Right.
And then I start throwing scenarios out there, and they're like, you can see them get real white, and they're like, yep, I'm not shooting. And it's like, you hate to paint that horror story, but you want to be honest with them.
Right. Also,
a breaking waterfowl dog is a bad deal. To
agreed.
me, it's I could never live with myself if I ever saw any harm to come to a dog because it broke to go after a bird.
I agree. And also, we're talking young dogs here. I mean, right? Depending on when you got your puppy, that first hunting season, 9 months, a year, maybe if you got the dog in the middle of hunting season, it might be a little over a year, right? You're talking about skipping what, 6 hunts maybe from shooting for the rest of the dog's life.
Yeah.
We're shaping future behaviors here for the rest of the dog's life. So don't look at it as, oh man, I can't shoot my limits or get some birds these few hunts. The dividends this is an exponential reward by taking that step back from being the hunter, becoming the dog trainer first.
Yep.
I mean, I really think that's where a lot of people go wrong. I went wrong there with my first as well.
It's an evolution. It's an evolution as a hunter. And, I've heard it many times on the podcast, it's about shooting limits. We want to shoot limits. Well, you evolve through that. Right. Most guys do. And then, like you said, your first dog, your second dog, you learn your mistakes and you become a better trainer, and the dogs, get better as you become a better trainer. But it's hard for people to see that and understand that right away.
Agreed. And I bring it up so people learn from my mistakes. They learn like everything seems like a rush. Like the puppy years go fast. Like you're trying to get the dog, like it seems like it's this huge rush to get the dog ready for its first hunting season. I want to get out. I want to shoot its first bird. Slow down. We're talking years here. Yep. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, my slogan, if you will, is enjoying the journey, one retrieve at a time.
All right.
And that's something that I don't know if anybody's ever said that before, but that was one day I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is a journey, right? And we hope it's a long journey. And that's the thing that you said there that I think is the most important is don't rush. When we're talking about any of this training, do not rush it. It's not worth it, because behaviors will not develop the way they need to develop. And you'll turn out, like I said, you'll have to go try and fix things. And for me, that's a lot of times I get those behavioral issues or those whatever. And that's what I'm trying to correct. I'm trying to work through it and get them, I've had dogs that people are like, well, you got a gun shy dog. It'll never hunt. Not all the time, but I've had gun shy dogs that were gun shy and I got them through it. And so, but you're also it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of work.
Right.
And there's no guarantee in that. But going back to what you said, don't rush any part of the training with the dog. Don't rush it. The second thing that I'll say is don't get mad. Don't get upset. And that's a mistake that a lot of people made. I've made it. You get upset. Well, the dog should do better than that. Well, you got to realize they're a dog.
Right.
They're just like us. They have good days and they have bad days, And the other thing that I would say, and that I've seen firsthand, that don't punish your dog. Okay? Don't punish them because they're not doing what you want them to do and how you want it to be done. Teach your dog.
Right.
And know throughout that dog's life, and I can guarantee you can relate to this, you're going to have a training moment or training situations where you're kind of butting heads, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I would say, and the old school was, all right, buddy, in certain situations, I do think that you have to hold your ground, but you have to be smart about how you do it, because if you overcorrect, you could set that dog back tremendously.
Sure.
Okay. But also know when to pick your battles. Okay. Know when you can have a successful outcome with that dog. And if that time is not right, call it quits for that day. Try to replicate that scenario in another day or another situation. If you know what went wrong, you'll be able to go to another area and try that again and teach that dog and work with that dog. Okay.
And you said something huge there, which took me a while to, like, if you're not getting it, it's okay to walk away from it. It's okay to come back to it, replicate it, set it up again. If you're working on something, it's okay just to go back, change it up, go back to a simpler task. Don't go back to a task at all. Just throw some fun bumpers or run around, completely change the atmosphere and go back to it a different day. Because as you said, it's not worth getting mad because the dog's going to feed off that energy. At least my dogs always have. If I start to get flustered or get mad, they start to respond even less because now because what I have found, and now this is a huge generation, like if the dog is, my dogs normally came down to the fact they didn't actually understand what I wanted from them. I wasn't doing my part as a trainer yet.
Yep.
So I'm asking them to do something they don't understand. And if I get frustrated, they're not going to understand it when I'm frustrated if they didn't understand it when I wasn't.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing there was like you were saying, the emotion.
Right.
Okay. I've been to, a lot of hunt tests and I always enjoy, of course, I love the highest level because that's the most intricate work. But I also love going at the lower level, like the junior level, where it's your younger dogs or they're just starting out. And I'll never forget one good quick story is a guy walked up to the holding blind and this dog was just ramped. He was just fired up. And I'm like, ooh-wee, he's ready to go, which we love to see. But he was having a hard time holding him in the holding blind. Well, he got up there and, he was going out for the single retrieve, the first marked retrieve. And the dog just went flying out there, but he was all over. Finally, he had a big hunt, but he picked up the bird, brought it back. The second one, it was the same situation. So he came back, and I'm a firm believer you don't give advice unless it's asked, especially in that scenario. But I could tell that the guy had not really done this before, so I wanted to help. And so I walked up to him and I said, I said, you were pretty nervous, weren't you? I said, boy, that's a doozy of a test. And he said, oh yeah. And he's still kind of breathing hard. He's still just shaking, and I love seeing that. But in the same breath, I said, he's like, yeah, he's never done that. He's never, usually he runs right out and grabs. Anyways, I looked at him, I said, you're pretty nervous, weren't you? Yeah. I said, that lead that you had that was running down to that dog, that was like an electrical line from you to that dog. I said, he felt every emotion in your body. And he just sat there and he's like, I said, they feel your emotions. So if you're nervous and you're all worked up, that's what got that dog all ramped up. I said, do me a favor in the next series. I said, come back. Your dog's going to nail it. Okay. Have faith that your dog is going to do wonderful. Envision it, whatever you have to do, but just try to stay as calm as you can. And he walked up to the line and you could see his demeanor was different, the way he handled it. First retrieve, bam, dog swims out there, nails it. Second retrieve, bam, swims out there, nails it. He comes back to me, he goes, wow, that was awesome. I said, it's as simple as that. And you're in the moment, so you don't understand it. But really, when you're training a dog, that's the same thing. Your emotions and your inflection, that is all directed towards that dog, and they're going to interpret that a different way. Some dogs handle it really well. Some dogs don't handle it really well, if you will. So keep your emotions in check as a trainer, put your trainer's cap on and get to work and have those expectations. So,
and that story just right there goes to show, like, those first couple of hunts, think about the emotions while hunting, and it's just going to be amplified. And that's why I go back real quick to that. Be a trainer first for those first couple of hunts, because the dog's never going to have experienced emotions from people around him as intense as when you're hunting and you're calling and the birds are working. Even you can call in a training scenario. My calling against, like, when there's actually birds working is way different sounding than when there's just me calling at a fake rubber duck on the water, right? Well, there's not a rubber duck, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, because you're putting more voice inflection into it. You're working the birds, and that's something they haven't even really, truly experienced.
Yeah, because in that kind of leads me into that. I want to lead into that next stage where you're developing that dog. You're working on the retrieves. You're throwing single retrieves. The other thing that you got eventually, hopefully you can do either through a training group or whatever is, don't assume, like you said, don't assume, and little things that people don't realize when it comes to training that dog up to be a gun dog. Okay. Here we are in the yard. We're throwing dummies for this dog. Okay. Well, in this dog's life, all the dummies have come from your side.
Right.
We eventually need to get to the point where hopefully those retrieves come from out in the field, because essentially that's what we're doing. So if you can get somebody to hide behind trees or whatever, little things like that. Okay. So we want to develop and get that dog to understand that the item doesn't come from us. Okay. And then we're evolving into birds as well. Okay.
Right.
We need to have birds, because to make a good bird dog, you need birds. Okay.
Right. I agree.
So you'll have to know your state rules and regulations on birds, and where you can, if you want to be able to shoot birds, where you can do that, and all the licenses and so on and so forth, in dog training areas or whatever. So, but if you can get dead birds to start with, dead pigeons are a good one. There's not as many regulations on those. I love working with dead pigeons to start from a young age. Getting them to get the feathers in their mouth, start getting that scent, and developing behaviors, not promoting bad behaviors. If dogs are wanting to hard mouth them, roll them, chomp on them. So after you've developed that retrieving behavior and that dog's doing really good and going out, picking it up, bringing it back, you can start digging into the birds a little bit more and getting that's another, like you said, and when you're training, well, that rubber dummy was nice, but boy, oh boy, when I smell that bird and I taste those feathers and maybe a little bit of blood, it takes them to a whole nother level. Right. So that's where your obedience is critical, and you keep training and keep working with that dog. And then eventually, like you said, we want to get in some gunfire. We start that remotely from a distance, and then slowly start working our way closer and closer.
Find a partner for that one. Find a partner. Like, there's a couple of things you need a partner for. You really do.
Yep.
Do not rush. Like, if you're going to rush, if that is the one thing you cannot rush. You have to take it slow. If it's something you haven't done before, that's one thing I really recommend. Like, finding someone that has done it successfully. There's even if you want to train your dog yourself, there's plenty of trainers out there that have a train the trainer program. And if you reach out saying, hey, I want help breaking my dog to gunfire, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg just to work with a trainer to help you for this one step.
No, a good example of that, like with me, because, there's some people like to bring me the dog, and I do all the work with the dog, if you will. And then but I also have that option, Brad, where, I call it session training.
Okay.
Come with me and spend, an hour or two with me. And I'm cheap. I think I charge $20 an hour,
Sure. Right.
And then, $20 an hour really isn't bad, but that's the idea. Reach out to somebody that'll do that for you, and spend that hour. If that's the one thing you want to work on that, and say, go to the trainer and say, this is what I want to work on. And they're going to help you. And, the other thing that's nice is a guy like me is I'll give you extra, I call them gold nuggets. I'll throw some more gold nuggets at you and say, hey, work on this while you're at home, because that's what it's about.
And don't be afraid to ask advice. Don't be afraid to call the trainer and say, hey, this is my first time doing this. And even if it's not your first time, even if you're in a new area, you moved, you don't have a hunting buddy yet, you don't have anyone that you can work with.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to just call a trainer and say, hey, this is what I need help with right now. What do you charge? Like, I'm doing this myself. Like, don't feel because like you don't have the experience, they're going to look down on you and be like, I'm not going to help this guy. Like, I've never met a dog trainer that has cared more about someone's knowledge than cared more than about training the dog properly. Every trainer I've ever worked with, their first concern has always been the dog.
You bet. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. So, and that's the other thing. And I keep kind of going back to it. Don't assume anything. So you get into, like you said, that's where a good partner or trainer can help you with that. Other little things to look at that are overlooked is you get out in the yard and you're doing yard work or whatever, and I'd be shocked at the number of people that don't put decoys out.
Sure.
And I've actually seen dogs go out and get wrapped up in a decoy line and lose it, just totally lose it. They've never felt that. So
Right.
that's one thing, one of the those gold nuggets I'll kind of throw in there. And most guys do it, but there's some guys that go out there and the next thing you know, you got a spread of decoys out there. And the dog, they're going out there and they're nosing every single, I've seen it. They'll nose decoys. The guys go, what's he doing? Well, how many times have you had him around decoys?
Right.
And I actually, you call me crazy, but I'll take a decoy rope and I'll wrap it around the waist of my dog. And I'll throw a dummy out there, because the concept is not me throwing the dummy. The concept is I want you to feel that around you.
Sure.
And I want you to feel when you're swimming through the water, that decoy slapping you in the back. You're okay. It's not going to bother me. I got to still go get the bird and I'm going to bring it back. So it's simple little things like that. I know I get off on a tangent. I apologize.
Well, no, that's really good advice. And also try to as things progress, train in areas where you're going to, or in similar areas where you're going to hunt. I mean, an issue I had with my Griff, which we haven't really worked through, but I don't use her that much for the first time I took her out when there was grass, like thick grass and some decoys, and she got confused. And it's because, and it was just because she wasn't used to that environment and she wasn't sure what to do. And it was a new environment is really what it was. I mean,
yeah. And that's, I wanted to, and I was going to get there, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the one thing is the socialization of the dog. Not only are we from a young age, we're socializing that dog to different sights, sounds, smells. I want to be able to take my dog with another dog and hunt. So we're going to make sure our dogs are good around. So I'm going to socialize with other animals. But I think just what you said is one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they do a ton of yard work. They don't do as much field work. But when they do field work, and that's difficult. And I understand, because it's hard to find places sometimes to do that.
Right.
But, you try to get that dog as many different places and do as many different training scenarios, because we want that dog to take that into stride. Good example for, when I was running the hunt test real hard and heavy, one weekend I'm out in Iowa. One weekend I'm in Wisconsin. One weekend I'm in Indiana. Even though it's still the Midwest, if you will, upper Midwest, it's different.
Right.
But I expect that animal to go perform at a high level no matter where I take that dog. Well, like you like to go different places and hunt.
Right.
I like to go to different places and hunt. So I want to be able to take that dog to as many different places as I can to get them ready for that, if you will. And don't be, if you don't do the work, you can't expect the result.
Right.
That you think should happen. Put the work in and do that with the dog. Get them as many places and get them familiar with that. That way, when you take them somewhere, it's second nature. It's just there.
And I get when you're doing water training in the summer, in hunting season, you don't want to smell a swamp dog when you get home. I get that. Right. But if you don't train in that grass, in those pads, in those mats with some decoys out there, and the first time they experience that is hunting, you're not setting them up for success anymore.
No, you're right. And there is, usually if you look at with whatever state you live in, there's usually state areas, that you can go train dogs, or they have dog training areas. So you do have to put the legwork in to find those places. But we're pretty fortunate in the area where we live. There are quite a few areas you can train dogs, and they're state parks or whatever, and they've got designated areas to go do that. So put that time in with the dog, and you're not only building the bond with that animal, you're preparing that dog for success, which in the long run is just that journey that you're on, and
Right.
and it's a wonderful thing. But so those are the little things, that you're going to look at through the development of the dog. But you're going to, like you said, we're going to go through gunfire. We're going to start associating the gunfire with the retrieve. And then eventually, as you move it in closer, then that evolves into you firing the blank or whatever, because that's usually we shoot poppers or so on and so forth. But I'm also developing the marking off the gun barrel. Okay.
Sure.
And the dog is starting to look out in the field. Well, the bird's now coming from the field. And I know when the gun goes bang, if we're a good shot and we did our job,
right.
which we know sometimes you get the eye from the dog that's like, what are you doing, man? So, but we start evolving into that, and we're putting that puzzle together for that dog, if you will, and they start understanding that. So the marking off the gun barrel. The other thing, and like you said, the hardest part is to simulate all of this. But that's where if you can get a training group, because there's different training groups. Southern Wisconsin has a bunch of different ones.
Yep.
Northern Illinois has some. But check your local areas and see where if they do have a club, because those are the things that you can work on that's hard to simulate one-on-one.
Right.
And good example, if you go duck hunting, yeah, it might be just you or a buddy, but say you're invited and there's 8 or 9 of you,
Sure.
you get 8 or 9 guns going off, it gets a little crazy. Okay.
Right.
And that happens a lot, and that could be overwhelming for that dog. But that's a situation where if you've got a training group and you get together and say, hey, can we work on this? I don't know any trainers that would say, no, I don't want to do that,
Right.
because you're there to better another person's dog and to help them, and you want success. So,
and you get a group together that size. I mean, even if you have an experienced dog, like we said, obedience is you're always training obedience. So even if my dog has been experienced to that, we get this group together. I would throw my dog in the ring too once we're done working with your dog, just to polish.
Yep. Yeah, you can never stop polishing, in my opinion. Just like you said, Brad, you never stop working and training. You never stop teaching, in my opinion.
Right.
You polish it, like you said, that you've got it all down, but then you polish it, and you continue to polish it, and you continue to polish it. And then when they get old and gray, maybe you let them get away with a little bit, but you know what I mean. They've earned that right to retire, and maybe, I'm saying, well, that one might be going a little deaf from all the gunfire, but darn good and well it's not going deaf.
Yeah, it's a crazy, like you said, it's a journey, but it's an amazing journey. And as you build that bond throughout the years, that's another reason why I say don't rush. I mean, you don't want to rush it. Like, it goes so fast the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have to decide also, when you're going through the process, what is your expectations of a gun dog? Okay. My expectations might be a little bit different than your expectations. Okay. So how advanced do you want the training to be? But that's up to you as an individual. For me, I love training. One of my favorite parts of retriever training is teaching blind retrieves.
Sure.
In handling and casting. Well, I know a lot of guys that have gun dogs, they don't do that. They don't want it. They just, they don't go that far in detail. But from my aspect, why I love doing it, I just love that, because not a lot of that DNA is in that animal to do that. That's all taught.
Sure.
You might have a genetic line that is more apt to run straighter lines when you're sending them back on a blind retrieve. I believe that is there.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen that with some of my genetics, but it's all taught. So we're teaching that to the animal. I love doing that. But what I always tell people when they say, I don't want to go that far or that advanced, I said, well, I love it because you have more success at getting that bird back.
Right.
And ultimately, as a conservationist, in my opinion, you're out there, you want to, any bird you bring down, you want to get it. Okay.
Agreed.
So if I can send that dog back and work with that dog through hand signals and casting to get that dog on that cripple or that bird as soon as I can, that's what I want to do. I don't want to lose that bird.
Agreed.
Okay. So is it for everybody? No. But that jumps way into more of the advanced stage. But I think a lot of people, if they would actually spend the time to do that and do it right, they would really get that much more enjoyment out of that with the dog. And I also think at that level of training, your bond becomes so much stronger.
Sure.
So much stronger because you're building that trust between you and that dog, and it really takes it to another level, So
Absolutely.
I know I jumped ahead there, but that's
not too far ahead, a little bit, but not too far.
Yeah, but just to back up a little bit, after I think we're trying to put the scenarios together or the things that could be downfalls for guys.
Right.
We don't have enough time to really go step by step through everything. I know we're in it pretty far, but I know we jumped over a lot, but that would be, and also the other part of the equation with the blind retrieve is, if you're knocking multiple birds down, you can't expect that dog to mark all those birds down.
Right.
You got 3 or 4 guys out there, and they're dropping, 2 or 3 birds a piece if you're really good shots, but you're going to have some sale maybe or go somewhere else. The dog can't mark it or see it. So that's where the blind retrieves come in nice as well. Let them go pick up the birds that they see if you want. But what I like it for is that cripple. Okay. I've got 3 or 4 birds stone dead on the water, if you will, or I know they're really not going anywhere, but I see one that's going. Good training, I'm going to pull that dog off those other birds, and I'm going to send that dog for that cripple. And then we can take our time and we can finish picking up the rest of the retrieves. So I love it for that aspect, for the cripples, especially for a gun dog. Yeah,
absolutely. And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And that's the thing is if you do that and you learn that, and you work with, even if you work, like I said, you work with a trainer, because there's a lot of knowledge that goes into that. There really is. But if you find a good trainer or somebody that's willing to work with you and help you, yeah. And there's stuff out there you can read that's good. There's DVDs, there's reading that'll work you through that and teach you how to do that. So
and that was
don't be afraid to do it. Don't think that you can't do it is what I'm getting at.
I agree. And that was one, even as a novice trainer, I saw really that was one thing that I actually took to relatively easily. Were we perfect at it? No. Mm-hmm. But I was able to train a really, really good back cast. Mm-hmm. I had good left and right. And was it perfect? No. I mean, it wasn't. I'm still an amateur trainer by far, but I could cast my dog normally good enough to get him on the scent trail of that bird and let his nose take over. So perfect. Even if you don't want to go all the way through it and you're like, I don't know. Even if you can just train a good solid back cast, you get your dog lined up, you give him a solid back, and you can get him on that scent trail, that's way farther than nothing.
Well, you know what? And that's, I agree with you, Brad, because we're talking a blind retrieve. We're not running a field trial. That's not what my expectations are. Now, of course, I run hunt tests, so I'm going to expect a little bit tighter line. I'm going to expect, less cast refusal. But ultimately, we want to just simplify it, your back cast and your overcast. You don't need to worry about angle backs. You don't need to worry so much about angle in. Just your overs and your backs. Get that dog in a position, like you said. We don't have to put that dog right on that bird. Yeah, in a hunt test we do. We're hunting. We're gun dogs. These are gun dogs. Just get him to that scent trail. Get him there. Doesn't matter how you get him there. I don't care if you got to give him an over than a back. It's still a beautiful thing.
Right, exactly.
So I agree with you. It's not don't let it be overwhelming, and don't think that you can't do it, because you can. And it really is simple. And actually, like I said, if you work with your dog, and a lot of times we're working on this stuff, you can, as early as a year and a half old. Some guys will even do it earlier depending on the dog.
Sure.
So, and it's one of those things where, same thing, work on it 10 minutes a day, and try to end those training sessions on a good note, not on a bad
Right.
note.
Right.
Success. We want success, but also know when to call it quits. So
Exactly. And of
yeah,
all the training I've done, I think that the blind retrieve is probably the most rewarding to me, to send a dog back, give them a whistle sit. And even if you just send them back again or over and they do it and they get to that bumper and come back, like, I always found that just super rewarding, because I always looked at it as a super technical training piece. And really, I wasn't the greatest trainer. So it's not actually that technical, probably, depending on how far advanced you want to get it. Right. But
right.
like, the training there is like, you give them a back cast and then you whistle sit them and they sit and look at you. I mean, that alone is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I did something. Like,
Yeah.
there is like, people look at that. Like, I had friends, like, with my lab. I don't remember what was in the yard. It might have been a piece of trash. I don't remember what it was,
Yep.
but I sent my dog for it. I stopped him and I sent him again, and he brought it back to me. And they looked at me. They're like, "How did you do that?"
Right.
Like, and it was just super rewarding to be like,
Sure.
we did this. And it's not just
Absolutely.
me. We did this. I taught
Absolutely.
you understood, and you're executing. This is a we. It's not a me.
Well, and when it's all said and done, that dog is working with you,
Right.
is developing that bond with you, and you work as a team. Like you said, it's we. And that's the biggest thing that people need to remember. It's a we thing throughout all the training of this dog. It's a we thing. And you'll have some dogs, and I've had dogs in the past where it's more about them,
Sure.
and that's fine. That's fine, but they still need to know some of the rules that go along with it, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, even those dogs where it was more of them, I still loved every second of it, and I
Sure.
wouldn't have traded it for the world, and some of those dogs ended up being the best dogs I've had,
Sure.
so yeah, by all means, I think for those guys that have never went to that level or are thinking they want to go to that level, just do your research on it. Reach out to people, help. It can be done, and I don't want people to shy away from it. It can be done, and like you said, when you're out there and you're in the blind, and you send a dog on a blind retrieve and you get that bird, the guys are sitting there next to you going, "Oh my gosh, how did you do that?" You're sitting there
Right.
and you don't want to puff your chest up, but you're like, I love that,
Exactly.
It's
Because you don't want to
great.
get cocky. Because when you get
No,
cocky, that's when your dog becomes a bonehead. And now
it'll
you just karma is real when it comes to dogs.
you
Karma
are
is
not
real.
you are not kidding. That is the truth, 100% truth right there. But yeah, they're they're wonderful to work with, and if you do your work, um you will have a wonderful ride, to say the least, and the memories that you have. And then, of course, it's always the hard time when they cross the rainbow bridge,
Right.
if you will. But one of the biggest things that I always say is hold on to those precious memories, that you have, and cherish those, and also realize that not every dog is created equal. Okay. So I have that a lot with you know with people that are coming to get puppies, and that's part of it. Is I'm fortunate that uh, a good majority of the people that get a puppy have had retrievers before, and one of the first things they like to talk about is their last dog, you
Sure.
know, and which is great. I love to do that, but I have to remind them that now this is a different dog. This
Right.
is not old Gus, and you have to realize that when you're going into it, that this isn't the same dog. So your expectations have to be realistic as well.
Right.
So um,
And it's very true. Not no dog is the same, and no dogs are, and some dogs have other strong points than others. I mean, my lab's a great example of that. Could I keep him steady in a blind? Yeah. Was he a much better upland dog because he just had the crazy drive for that, which led me into my passion for grouse hunting? Absolutely. He was. He really, I mean, there was a difference there. I mean, he was a high strung, high energy lab, which you could keep steady, but you could tell he didn't enjoy being steady. But you let him loose in the woods or a pheasant field, there was a different fire in him.
Brad, I've had those dogs. I had that chocolate male that I was telling you about. He was a great retriever, did a great job. Same thing though, his steadiness, he would push me every chance he got to break on a bird, you know what I mean? But pheasant hunting was his true passion.
Sure.
That dog, I used to tell everybody else, hey, if he could, I mean, he literally wanted to burn the grass down. I mean, he was a retriever that ran and hunted like a pointer.
Sure.
He was not a quartering lab. I learned that early in his career, I call it, if you will. He was a wind checking dog. He would make his nice loop. My biggest thing was keeping him within range, so we're not bumping birds. Okay?
Man, they might have came from the same lineage because my chocolate was so similar to that.
He would ride the wind with his nose up, and you would swear. There's times I'd see him, you swear you had a long line on him, and you checked him. You know, his head would snap. And the other part with that dog is he was waiting for no one. I'm telling you, he would not wait. If he smelled that bird, he was on it, and you better be up there to try and get that bird. But
man, that's so funny. It's so similar because my lab was real. Like he was great at wind checking, and like you could see when he got a good bird scent when he would transition from wind to ground, and like his tail would change and it'd be perfectly flat like a helicopter going back and forth, no circles, no up and downs, just perfectly fat. And you better get moving because you're not going to hold him back. Like he's going to chase this running bird. And my buddy would always laugh because he'd see me pick up my pace through the woods or through the field. And he knew I'd be like, man, it's birdie. We got to go. Like he's not slowing down. If this bird's running, he's going to find it.
I want to tell you a story and I'm going to try and make this as short as I can, but I have to share this story. It's one of my favorite stories of this dog. I had taken my oldest son, who is now 23. He's in the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, he's on leave, and I just picked him up at the airport today. I took him on his very first hunt, and I believe he's 8 years old.
Okay.
And so we got out to the field, and we got there early because multiple different people had an opportunity to hunt this field. It was private land, but we got out there early because I wanted to have a good hunt with him for his first hunt. And I decided to run just this dog alone. So we got into the field. We heard roosters cackling first thing in the morning. So we got in the field, and a rooster had flushed on my side, and old Deadeye here missed all 3 shots. Well, the bird circled around behind us, and it was a 90-degree angle in the fence line. And the bird sailed over probably 100, 150 yards and come down over the fence line and sat back on. And I told my son, I said, well, we'll see what the rest of the field does here, but we'll circle back eventually. So we worked through the field, and we were flushing. He was flushing some hens, and he ended up flushing a rooster, I think, to my side, and I got it. And then we kept going, some more birds. Flushed another bird. There was another guy in the field that had a Weimaraner.
Okay.
So I shoot this bird, okay, and my male is running over there to retrieve, and all of a sudden he puts the brakes on. Well, this guy's 300 yards from me, and he's staggered, but we're kind of working towards each other. We're trying to be safe, but this guy's not moving down at the other end of the field. Well, I go up, and I'm like, well, why isn't he retrieving the bird? Well, this Weimaraner, I had no idea this Weimaraner was there. I dumped this bird right in this dog's lap, if you will. He picked it up, and he's just standing there. Well, I walked up to this Weim, and I'm trying to give him all the release commands, and he's growling at me, and I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, this dog's going to tear me apart. Anyways, I get the bird. The dog goes on. We keep going. We flush another bird to my son's side, and he misses it. and it flies all the way to this other guy, and he dumps it. Well, he's got no dog. I sent my dog on the retrieve. Anyways, he comes back. He's got the bird. I'm like, well, that was really smart, Steve. Now you got to walk this bird all the way over to this guy. So I do. Well, at this time, we're working with the wind in our face.
Okay.
And so we walked with the guy, and I said, your dog was all the way up there. And he apologized. I said, it's okay, no problem. I said, do you want to walk with us and hunt back towards him? He's like, nah, I'll just stay here. You know, he saw my young son. He's like, I know this is kind of special for you guys. So we went on, we flushed some more birds. Now we're working with the wind at our back. Well, we get back and flush multiple birds. Anyways, we get back, the dog's, it's early season, so the dog's a little tired. And of course, my son is, you know, those little legs are trying to work through the field. So I said, let's just take a break for a little while. I said, do you want to keep hunting? And he said, oh, absolutely. You know, so let's take a break. Let's water the dog, give the dog a break. So we did. And we lined back up on that next fence line where that other rooster had went. So I put my son towards the outside because I'm hoping the fence line will cause them to flush, you know, his way. And they had a strip of corn planted, you know, like 6 rows, I think, you know, is for food for the pheasant. And so I had the dog at heel, and I looked at my son. I said, are you ready? And he's like, yeah, I'm ready, Dad. And I said, hunt him up. And as soon as I said, hunt him up, he jumped over into the corn rows. I had him in the grass, jumped over in the corn rows, and he took off like he was on a blind retrieve. And I thought, I just stood there and I'm like, what in the world is he doing? Because, I mean, there was no hunt. It was all just go. And all of a sudden, I see my dog jump over into the grass. I see some of the switchgrass moving. And here he comes out with a rooster in his mouth.
You winged that one.
That was the very first bird that I shot. But through all of that, what amazed me the most is I had the wind at my back. So I know he didn't scent that bird. Through all of that chaos and all of that hunting, that dog remembered that very first bird.
That's crazy. He remembered where it went down. That's crazy.
And you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards.
Right.
He still remembered where he was at, where that bird went down. But he's also the same dog that could literally triangulate off your barrel. If he was over here and he didn't flush the bird and it went this way and I shot it, you would watch that dog look at my gun barrel and you watch his head swing down that gun barrel, and he literally would take off at that angle and go pick that bird up.
That's crazy.
He was special. He was
absolutely sounds special.
He was a special dog. You don't see that very often. And some of that's not trained. That's that DNA that's in there. So sorry about the long story. I get off on those long-winded tangents, but it's fun to share those stories.
Absolutely. My show always has stories in it. That's part of the show. That's part of the fun. I mean, it's not just, you got to let those stories and those experiences, like I say in all my show, it's all about the experience. And that's where those experiences come out is in our stories and our. So I'm going to give the last couple minutes here to you.
Okay.
Anybody you want to thank, your kennel name, everything else, lay it all out there for the guys so they can find you. They can reach out to you if they're interested in getting a puppy, if they're interested in training.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my family, my wife and my children. They're very special that they allow me to do this. Sure. You know, it's a lifestyle, if you will. So they help and they tolerate the chaos, I guess I should say, and they allow me to do it. And it can be overwhelming at times, and you know, it's hard for me sometimes to step back and see that, because I enjoy that chaos, you know. Sure. And they might not enjoy it as much, but they're supportive and they support me in many ways, and I'm so very thankful. So for my family, you know, excuse me, for going out and letting me chase this passion that I have. So for Facebook, I have Facebook. It's Kickn Brass Retrievers. It's no, you'll have the link, but I have that. I'll be honest with you, Brad. I am so terrible at social media. I don't really put a lot on there now. If I hit a dog in for training, that's usually when I'll kind of help the owner see progress and update, what they're doing. But then here, not that long ago, I started the Instagram, and that's Kickn Brass Retrievers as well. But you'll see on some of those, it's not all about dog training. I still put some of my hunts on there, or successes, for
Sure.
whatever we're chasing or whatever we're hunting. But you can reach out to me there, via Messenger or through Instagram. And I'm one of those guys where I want to help. So it's not for me. It's really not about the money. I mean, I want to see people succeed and help them out any way that I can. And so, if you got questions, if anybody's got questions, or they want to pick my brain, if they're having issues or what should I do? I mean, message me. I'll be more than happy to help you. Because I've been blessed to be able to do this for as long as I have, and I hope to continue to do it. And that's the other thing, is I've always had somebody there to help me too.
Sure.
And as a trainer, the day that you think you know everything is probably going to be a bad day.
Right.
Because there's always somebody out there that has, I don't want to say so much more knowledge than you, but their angle or the way they do it, or they've seen those issues more frequently, and they're willing to help. So I've been helped along the way from many different people, and but I've worked hard to get where, to get the knowledge that I have. But definitely, by all means, if anybody has any questions, reach out. Like I said, you probably won't see a ton of content on there just because I get busy, and
sure,
that's not my focus, but it is a way for people to reach out to me.
Absolutely.
If they have any questions. So,
and I'll put all the links in the show description for everyone listening, so you can easily find it.
Yep. I appreciate that. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, by all means. I mean, I have a good amount of knowledge. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I'll help you any way that I can.
That's awesome. I mean, that's huge for anyone listening. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge offer right there. So,
yep. And just, that's the thing is I get it with people. There's a lot of times where people don't want to bring their dog in. It's hard for them to bring a dog in for training and leave that dog with another person. And I understand that. So that's why I like doing session training. And then also in the same, if you live in Florida, you live in wherever, just message me. If you got questions, I'll be more than happy to help you. And I don't expect anything in return. I want you to be successful with your dog and to enjoy that journey, if you will.
Right.
So by all means, I love, as you can see, I love talking dogs. and when you have a passion for it, you love doing it. You want to help and see other people strive and do well. It's important.
That's awesome. Steve, I really appreciate you coming on. Ton of knowledge, super high level overview. I know we could have probably a dozen episodes alone digging into each individual topic. So Absolutely. There's just not enough time for it, unfortunately. I really appreciate you coming on. To all my listeners, thanks for tuning in. Without you, I wouldn't do this. And until next time, everyone, keep chasing that experience.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.